You did what I'm saying. If they all hollers, I'm a counterfeit. Yeah, I wanted money, I couldn't enjoy class.
In 2017, with social media, it seems that more so than ever, we are in tune with the happenings of hip-hop artists and their run-ins with the law. From jail time to arrests to when they get charged, headlines are made constantly. Gucci, Kodak, and X are three recent examples that come to mind, and the common sentiment that I've seen thrown around online is that hip-hop artists are treated unfairly by the law. But rarely are these ideas backed up with any sort of solid proof, studies, or cases, and this sparked a curiosity in me to explore just how true this idea is, and to what extent hip-hop artists are abused by the law. This is going to be a pretty dry video, filled with a lot of information, but I urge you to push through it, pay attention, and stick through to the end, because the results were shocking to me, and they will probably be shocking to you as well. I'm going to overlay this video with random footage so you don't have to look at me for much longer, but without further ado, let's dive right in. Certain genres have historically been looked down upon and judged by those who lack understanding and appreciation for the surrounding culture. Death metal gets judged for its gothic aesthetic, punk has been associated with outlandish hairstyles and a rebellious nature, and hip-hop or rap music has been associated with the gang culture of misogyny, violence, and crime. However, society has taken this prejudice one step further with rap music, where lyrics performed by artists are used against them in a court of law, where it has been ascertained that their artistic expressions may act as intent to carry out a crime, or even illustrate a crime has been committed. This leaves many questions unanswered. For starters, why does this occur in rap music and not other forms of music, some of which may have equally graphic and violent lyrics? What effect does this have on the court system as a whole, from the lawyers to the juries to the judges? And finally, does this have far-reaching effects on the culture of hip-hop? Various cases, studies, and examples will be used as a platform to explore these questions, where it will be evident that the use of rap lyrics as evidence on trial perverts the course of justice, and hip-hop being abused by the law is just another form of racism and prejudice within our society. This story begins in 1994, where Judge William Bedsworth wrote about the admissibility of hip-hop lyrics, saying, quote, "These lyrics demonstrate Mora's membership in Southside. Nothing makes these rap lyrics inherently unreliable." From this point onwards, it created a precedent where hip-hop lyrics are viewed as being presented by rappers as human beings rather than artists, and thus opened the floodgates for future instances. But before we jump into the court and law side of things, let's establish how hip-hop is viewed and stereotyped by wider society. A study by Fried concluded that when people are asked to judge the lyrics of a song, there are various superficial aspects that are considered, namely the genre of the music and the race of the artists. Fried sums up his results, saying, quote, "The exact same lyrical passage which is accepted as a country song or when associated with a white artist becomes a dangerous, offensive song in need of government regulation when it is a rap song or associated with a black artist." A further study by Neger and Sabatsker, both names are completely butchered by the way, concluded that labeling hip-hop as, quote, "problem music" in fact foments stereotypes of those genres of music, making the, quote, "lyrics look more problematic and deviant than they actually are." These two studies, although independent in their own right, come together to illustrate an overarching point about the perception of hip-hop in greater society. The perception that hip-hop promotes violence and is in need of government regulation stems from racial prejudices against African Americans and prejudice against hip-hop as a genre, as well as this, the stereotype around hip-hop that is displayed in the media that it is, quote, "problem music" exacerbates the greater community's harsh judgment of hip-hop. This view held by the general population is then translated not only to the willingness to accept rap lyrics at trial, but makes for the harsh judgment of said rap lyrics and rap artists at trial. As hip-hop is seen to be more dangerous and offensive than other forms of music, wider society believes that hip-hop music, more so than other forms, needs to be regulated and stopped. So now that we've established how hip-hop is viewed negatively by the general population, we move on to how it is applied in the courts. Firstly though, a couple rules of America's legal system needs to be explained. Rule 401 states that if evidence can make something less or more probable, it is relevant and admissible under 402, subject to exceptions. But 403 has rules against this, and can deem evidence irrelevant if it creates unfair prejudice or confuses or misleads the jury. So 403 is where lyrics would come into play, whether or not lyrics can be seen to create unfair prejudice or mislead the jury. A case in which these rules have been bent can be seen in United States v. Foster, where the court believed that because of Foster's use of drug code words in his lyrics, it made it probable that he was carrying illegal drugs. So what? Just because Foster was familiar with the slang used for drugs, it means that he's more likely to traffic illegal drugs? Just from listening to rap, I've picked up on a lot of drug slang talk, and you probably have as well, but does that make us more likely to traffic illegal drugs? I think that's an unfair assumption to make. Another case is a People v. Strata, where the court was even aware of undue prejudice resulting from gang evidence, but they still admitted the lyrics of Estrada's, saying that it highlighted he had intent to kill. These examples highlight, firstly, the fickle ties that are needed for courts to draw conclusions between lyrics and intent or probability, and secondly, the malicious intent of certain judges, where despite them openly admitting the potential for undue prejudice, the evidence was still made permissible. Furthermore, more has been done in order to restrict and convict artists who write raps than alleged child molesters who own child pornography. In United States v. Curtin, a reversible error was found by the Ninth Circuit to not allow reading material that is pornographic as evidence due to prejudice. The Ninth Circuit stated that pornographic evidence shouldn't be used at trial as, quote, the link between fantasy and intent is too tenuous. Wait, so you're telling me that it is more of a reach to assume a child molester who actually possesses child pornography did molest children than it is to assume an artist who makes references to drug code words actually traffics illegal drugs? Why is the tenuous link allowed in the drug code words as lyrics case, but not in the child molesting case? This is another form of, and shows a prejudice that exists between both African Americans and hip-hop music, this time by judges. As such, it is evident that the negative attitudes of hip-hop extend to how rules of evidence are applied to hip-hop artists, highlighting that negative attitudes towards rap may in fact block the proper enforcement of court rules by judges, and pervert the course of justice. Another aspect to this is the effect these attitudes have on the presentation of a case by the prosecutors, as well as the jurors involved in the case. There have been multiple instances of prosecutors taking advantage of the negative attitudes towards hip-hop and hinging on the fact that a defendant is a rapper. They may take lyrics completely out of context where it is irrelevant, or worse, when they have no substantial evidence, they have to exploit these attitudes to get a successful case. An example of this can be seen in State v. Moore. In this case, Moore was charged with 2 robberies. In one robbery, he was the getaway vehicle, where Moore claimed he had no knowledge a crime had been committed. Secondly, Moore was charged for a robbery that occurred in Fullerton at 11:50 a.m. Moore claimed that on the day he was working as a cashier at Las Vegas Golf and Tennis Shop, which was in Huntington Beach, which was almost an hour away from where the robbery occurred. Both sales receipts and register printouts from the shop indicated that Moore completed sales at 11:30 a.m. and 12:05 p.m., whilst the robbery he was found guilty of occurred at 11:50 a.m. meaning it was more or less impossible for him to undertake the robbery given the circumstances. Even more so, 2 employees declared Moore was at work on the day, with one stating he, quote, never missed a day of work, was always on time and never left early. However, what a search of Moore's house did find was that he was a huge fan of gangster rap, finding lyrics of his own. The attorney responsible for presenting the case to the jury brought up the fact that he was an avid fan of gangster rap, claiming that he likes rap music as it reflects his life because his life is full of crimes and that he committed both of these. The jury agreed with the attorney and Moore received 12 years of prison. Moore still maintains his innocence, saying, quote, other rappers receive awards for their songs. Not me, I got 12 years in prison. Despite the store records of Moore working at the time, on top of the employees stating he was at work, Moore still was found guilty due to his appreciation and creation of rap music. Thus, it is evident that prosecutors will cling at any opportunity to bring up hip-hop artists' lyrics because it will exploit negative attitudes towards rap and help to sway the jury. Aside from cases, there is hard evidence to support this claim. This will be shown through the case of State v. Rollins. Rollins was an 18-year-old African-American athlete arrested for murdering an ex-girlfriend. The prosecution entered a portfolio found in his house as evidence, which contained graphic rap lyrics. The defense argued against the admission of these lyrics. The judge demanded proof that the prejudicial value of the lyrics would outweigh their value. They called upon Dr. Fishoff of California State University, who supported the claim, stating that allowing such lyrics would, quote, arouse in jurors not only a connection between writing such lyrics and committing a murder, but also call up other negative personality characteristics. Despite this, the judge still admitted the lyrics and found Rollins guilty. However, this sparked Dr. Fishoff to explore and find more hard evidence about the effect rap lyrics could possibly have. He gave 134 people 4 conditions, where a target male was an 18-year-old African American with a good academic record who planned to attend college. The conditions were all different. One had the authoring of rap lyrics but no murder charge, one had murder charges but no lyrics, another mentioned neither, and the last had both present. The results showed that a potential juror was more likely to judge a gangster rap lyricist I repeat, not accused of murder, more harshly than a non-gangster rap lyricist who was accused of murder, highlighting that the mere fact that someone is a hip-hop artist was more damning of a person's character than an actual charge of murder. The results clearly show that jurors are easily swayed by society's perception of what being a hip-hop artist entails. Moore's case, as well as Dr. Fishoff's study, cement the effect of rap lyrics on the presentation of a case by the prosecution and jurors, where the prosecution will hinge on the fact that the alleged is a rapper and use it to sway the minds of the jurors, who are predispositioned to believe that hip-hop artists act and behave in a dangerous manner. Another angle that stems from the growing use of lyrics at trial is the effect on the artist and the hip-hop culture in general. As the issue grows and grows, it is possible that artists may feel trepidation about their craft and feel the need to restrict themselves artistically. This threatens to harm artistic creativity and freedom. Murray Richmond, who was an attorney for Jamal Barrow, a rapper convicted of attempted murder who had his lyrics read out at trial, put forth a similar sentiment, that allowing lyrics as evidence, quote, would put in the mind of every artist that you've got to be careful what they write about because it goes to the question of your intent. This may leave the hip-hop community apprehensive to fully express themselves, and more so may act to harm the industry, which is largely fueled by the controversy it creates on a daily basis. The final point here will help to tie up all the points made throughout the piece. It is a quote by a justice who was responsible for a decision that overturned a case where lyrics were used. They believed that the lyrics were disturbing and highly prejudicial, stating that they had doubts whether the jurors would have found the defendant guilty without the lyrics. Justice Janie Levicia added in her opinion that no one would expect Bob Marley to have shot a sheriff, or that Edgar Allan Poe actually buried a man under his floorboards, as both artists have illustrated in their art, concluding that, quote, lyrics should receive no different treatment. Furthermore, would the everyday person assume that famous horror directors, such as George Romero or Wes Craven, are more inclined to commit murderous acts and violence simply because that is how they choose to express themselves artistically through their movies? No, it just doesn't make sense to do so. But despite how psychopathic the recurring themes presented within horror movies are, such directors are given free passes. Compare this to hip-hop artists who use noise and lyrics to embody their expression, but instead get convicted of crimes for doing so. As such, it is evident that the topic of hip-hop getting abused by the law is one that is multi-layered. It involves issues of racial prejudice, where the negative attitudes towards hip-hop are an extension of prejudice towards African Americans. This then acts to pervert the course of justice, affecting everything from the jury's verdict to how judges enforce rules and procedures. And finally, it is an issue that ultimately threatens to harm and regress an art form that has become the driving force behind popular culture. This all comes together to create a complete circle of how hip-hop is abused by the law, beginning with negative attitudes that are held by a certain populace, which then in turn negatively affects actions from the judges, juries, and lawyers in the courts, and consequently is detrimental to rappers who may get unfairly treated by the law. Not only this, however, it ultimately poses a threat to hip-hop as a culture, completing the circle and showcasing how hip-hop as a whole is abused by the law. Alright guys, that's all from me today. Thanks a lot for watching. If you found this interesting, please like, subscribe and share it around. Also, follow me on all social medias for more.